What kind of codependent are you? And what does that have to do with astrology? Listen to this episode to find out. Right now, we're standing at a threshold between logic and emotion. The upcoming new moon in Gemini is about to conclude a whole season of fast-moving and unpredictable energy. When the sun moves into Cancer, the energy will finally start to slow down again. We are being offered a mid-year check-in to cultivate intimacy with ourselves and heal codependency. What is up, my witches? Welcome to the Queer Soul Alchemy podcast, a supportive community helping queer folks to embrace their authentic selves by exploring yoga, astrology, and spirituality. I'm your host, Lee Davey. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host and favorite queer envy priestess, Lee Davey, your humble soul shepherd, your inner alchemy doula, your dad on vacation if your dad was a pagan bisexual degenerate. And in this episode, we're unpacking the astrological symbolism of the upcoming new moon in Gemini on June 14th, the sun's shift into emotional and sensitive Cancer on the summer solstice, and why this time of year is perfect for slowing down and checking in with the energetic alignment of our head and our heart. Do your thoughts, words, and actions align with your values and emotional truth? Do your relationships with others reflect a healthy or harmful relationship with yourself? You'll learn how to align your head and your heart for a new start, free from codependency and toxic relationships. But first, new episodes of this podcast drop every Wednesday, posted to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Please make an offering to the algorithm gods by leaving the show a like, a comment, and a 5-star review. Please, they're so hungry for likes. If you really want to please the gods, comment the name of your favorite pop diva or queer icon in honor of Pride Month. And please subscribe. Not only does it please the gods the most, it also really helps our fellow queer spiritual seekers find this magic. Don't miss out on exclusive access to my free self-care resource guide, which I've specifically created for you to support your journey with spirituality. To download this guide and be the first to know about upcoming queer yoga retreats and events, please sign up for our email newsletter at www.youareloved.one/pod. All right, y'all, let's get into it. Is Mercury in the microwave again? No, Mercury is still not retrograde, but we've been talking a lot about Gemini's energy recently on the podcast as the sun and other planets have been moving through the archetype of Gemini, bringing in lots of ideas, quick communication, sudden shifts, and unpredictable energy. We've also discussed the recent shift of Uranus, the planet of innovation, rebellion, technological breakthroughs, from the stable, fixed Earth sign of Taurus to the spontaneous, mutable air sign of Gemini. Listen to our previous astrology episode if you want to hear a deep dive about Uranus in Gemini for the next 7 years. We're closing out this year's Gemini season with a Gemini new moon, just the energetic reset and cleanse that we need before moving into emotional Cancer season. From air to water, mind to memory, and from thinking to feeling, big time. Let's break it down. First, we have a new moon in the sign of Gemini coming up on June 14th. Gemini season officially ends on June 20th, before Cancer season starts on the summer solstice, June 21st. Gemini's archetypes are the twins, the journalist, and the student. Gemini is the mutable air sign ruled by Mercury, planet of intellect, language, and perception. Gemini rules the 3rd house of early childhood, siblings, communication, broadcasting, and intellect. And that twin archetype of Gemini is reflective. A Gemini is a social chameleon. It can blend seamlessly into many different social groups and spaces and bring unlikely people together and facilitate connection between them, or conversation at the very least. Quick-witted, analytical, irreverent, and often hilarious, Gemini thrives on learning. They absorb information rapidly and sometimes forget it just as rapidly because their curiosity is already chasing the next idea. Gemini is the sign that enthusiastically asks the next question before you've even finished the first one. As the mutable air sign, Gemini is adaptable and social. They're natural communicators and responsive listeners, masters of reading between the lines, and they're able to mirror different personalities with ease. Hence that, again, that twin archetype or mirror archetype. Sometimes they get called two-faced, and that's kind of pointing to this quality. It's that social chameleon quality. Geminis can blend seamlessly into different social groups and spaces, bringing unlikely people together and facilitating conversations, friendships, and community between them. The twins archetype represents duality, complexity, and paradox. Gemini can hold multiple perspectives at once, and even perspectives that appear to contradict each other, they can hold at the same time because they value curiosity over being, quote, right. And for many queer folks, this energy has been imperative, learning to be able to adapt their behaviors and kind of code switch between worlds, right? Biological and chosen family, safety and authenticity, tradition, and then liberation. This ability to code switch becomes necessary for survival. Fitting in and self-expression have to be two things that exist in contradiction, but exist at the same time. The shadow side of Gemini is that when the mind is always active, it can spiral into overthinking, overwhelm, and anxiety, or get stuck in analysis paralysis, trying to solve problems intellectually. And Gemini often tries to logic through or laugh off their emotions instead of slowing down and actually feeling their emotions in their body. The defense mechanism is this belief that if I can understand and analyze it, then I don't have to deal with feeling it somatically. Geminis can also struggle with commitment. There's an impulse to run from discomfort or from any type of silence and stillness. So this impulse can manifest as a lot of different distractions, including relationships. And a Gemini might be surrounded by various relationships because they feel they need to have a person or a group to reflect in order to have their own identity. But when one person's identity is shaped by reflecting another's, then being alone can feel disorienting to that person. Gemini on their own might start to wonder who they really are, and then overthinking and anxiety take over and they start to spiral. And so Gemini's deeper lesson is integration, slowing down, being present mentally, and allowing the information they collect mentally through details to actually settle into the wisdom of their body, to become physically embodied and grounded that way. If Gemini is your sun sign, your identity centers around communication, adaptability, and a lifelong love of learning. If Gemini is your moon sign, your emotional world processes through thought and conversation. If Gemini is your rising sign, others experience you as witty, intelligent, highly sociable, and possibly flaky or scattered. If your Venus sign is in Gemini, you need to be mentally stimulated in order to fall in love. You may be especially attracted to intelligence, enjoy long conversations with your loved ones, and appreciate variety when it comes to your romantic and relational affairs. If your Mars sign is in Gemini, you are likely called a Renaissance person who can do a fair job at many different things, but who is a master of none. Your many various interests and skills might make it difficult for you to go deep and commit to any single path. But as I mentioned, this can also kind of be a strength, and you like to work with your hands and are likely good at it. Gemini teaches us that curiosity is sacred, but embodiment is also essential. Information only becomes wisdom when it is integrated. All of that mental energy without grounding and embodiment just becomes anxiety. You are allowed to evolve and change your mind. Just don't forget to come home to yourself in between conversations. This new moon in Gemini represents a mental new beginning. It asks, what stories have you been telling yourself about yourself? Have these narratives been serving you, or is there a new story that's more relevant? What story would you like to be true about yourself? By visualizing and conceptualizing this version of yourself, it will help you to actually manifest that version into your present reality. What conversation do you need to have with yourself or someone else to access that ideal version? The invitation of this Gemini new moon is for conscious communication, speaking clearly, listening deeply, noticing and honoring what arises. Keep listening to the end of the episode. I have an exercise that's going to help you do just that. So reflect, you guys. Where does Gemini rule in your chart? Which house? And do you have any planets in Gemini? These areas will be highlighted for you during these last few days of Gemini season. Where am I intellectualizing my emotions instead of actually experiencing and feeling them somatically? And what would it look like to sit in silence without any mental stimulation, even just for a few minutes each day? So, as the sun moves from mutable air energy into the cardinal water sign of Cancer, the energy is going to shift dramatically, you guys. Cancer season begins on June 21st, which is also the first day of summer, and it carries us through July 21st. Ruled by the moon, the celestial body that governs tides and the subtle rhythms of our emotional world, Cancer also rules the fourth house of home, family, and land ownership. And the Cancer archetypes are the crab and the mother. At its highest vibration, Cancer is emotional intelligence, intuition, care, and profound empathy. It creates safety, it holds space. Cancer is deeply intuitive and emotionally honest. And there really is just an ocean of depth. On the surface, Cancer energy feels playful and warm, but spend enough time hanging out with a Cancer, and you may just find yourself confessing your entire life story. People tend to just open up more easily and quickly around Cancer placements. Healthy Cancer energy protects and nurtures those people, but unhealthy Cancer energy extracts and neglects. And I really wanted to talk about this shadow aspect of Cancer energy because I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough. I'm a Cancer and I was raised by a Cancer. So I also feel like I have a lot of personal firsthand experience with it. Like the crab's sharp claws protect its vulnerable, soft insides. Cancer energy can use emotional intelligence for self defense, but in a way that's harmful to others. Their exoskeleton can harden into a wall of emotional distance, and that emotionality is not expressed, but it's still running the show. The unhealthy Cancer may have learned throughout their lives that their emotions are just not acceptable. And instead of holding space for themselves and others, they have learned to bottle up their emotions. But Cancer's emotions are very strong, and inevitably, if bottled up, they will explode at some point. And then because Cancers have the tendency to do this, they haven't learned a better way to cope. They might also expect that others are doing this, even on an unconscious level. Or they may just be in kind of a constant state of emotional stress and moodiness because the emotions are very intense. And if they haven't learned healthier ways to self regulate their emotions, then that emotional distress and moodiness can be temporarily relieved by codependency. Water is known to hold memory. Cancer is forgiving, but rarely forgets an emotional hurt. Emotional experiences live in the body, which is 70% water, by the way, and Cancer feels everything: personal grief, collective grief, ancestral grief. And at a high vibration, this is profound emotional intelligence, and the Cancer can use this for an incredible healing capacity and help others. But at a low vibration, which just means having less energy at its disposal, right? It becomes moodiness, that passive aggressiveness, projection, or toxic quiet resentment. The shadow of Cancer energy can be quite cruel. As the cardinal water sign, Cancer is a natural leader who leads through examples, preferably of deep care and empathy, or through examples of emotional terrorism. Oftentimes, in order to be healthy, a Cancer must learn healthy boundaries, whether that's setting their own healthy boundaries or respecting the healthy boundaries of others. Oftentimes, that's a core lesson in a Cancer's lifetime. A Cancer without boundaries, at best, it's codependent. At worst, they can resort to passive aggression, emotionally manipulative, even emotionally abusive behavior. But a healthy Cancer with boundaries, oh, what of those who mistake a healthy Cancer's kindness for weakness? A healthy Cancer does not play about their boundaries. No, healthy Cancers do not play about boundaries. Do not. If you are receiving the love of a healthy Cancer, they will see the red flag and set a boundary. And then you will be very sad because you will no longer be receiving that love in that same way. So come correct. Don't make us set a boundary with you. You won't like it. And some people really struggle with setting boundaries because they know other people won't like it. And that gets into people pleasing and codependency, which we will touch on in a second. Cancers tend to act as the emotional glue that holds families, friendships, and communities together. They instinctively take on emotional labor, often without being asked, and they may have been conditioned from a young age that their worth and value depends on them doing so. If this pattern of unconsciously taking on emotional labor is left repeated and unconscious, a Cancer's toxic trait is overgiving, especially from a cup that's already empty, because they might have trouble receiving. So, this is where toxic empathy can build up and lead to burnout, again, codependency, and a lot of suffering. Cancer can unconsciously create one sided codependent dynamics and then feel abandoned within them. Talking to myself. Been there. This pattern can lead to a lot of resentment and suffering. And the pattern actually isn't martyrdom, it's actually a fear of not being needed. Paradoxically, while cancers nurture everyone else, they may struggle to be vulnerable themselves. And as I said, they may struggle to nurture themselves or accept nurturance from others. They fear that their softness will be used against them. So sometimes they armor up and that wall becomes really thick. And they say, I'm fine, even when they're not, because it gives the illusion that they're in control. So, when I say toxic empathy, I mean that unhealed Cancer energy can unconsciously derive self worth from attempting to fix or save others, particularly those who aren't ready to change. Been there a million times, you guys, talking to myself. Because Cancer is the mother archetype of the zodiac, Cancer natives are nurturing by nature and more prone to becoming parentified. Any zodiac sign could, of course, become parentified, but in my opinion, Cancer and Capricorn are the zodiac signs most likely to have codependency trauma because they are the mother and father of the zodiac. So they're more natural nurturers. Parentification, if you're not familiar, is a form of invisible childhood trauma where there's a role reversal between the parent and child, and the child is forced to take on responsibilities within their family that are developmentally inappropriate, like cooking and cleaning, caring for younger siblings, or attending to their parents' emotional and psychological needs instead of vice versa. So, I wanted to share a few articles with you guys on codependency because I think it's really good information. I think codependency is misunderstood, and I wanted to just really clearly lay it out for you guys. Whether or not you have Cancer placements in your charts, I think we can all relate to codependency or at least have heard about it. So, this first article I found is called Understanding Codependency. It's from a group called MIG Counseling, Marriage, and Family Therapy. What is codependency? Codependency is a complex and often misunderstood psychological concept that affects many individuals and relationships. It's typically characterized by an unhealthy reliance on another person, either emotionally, psychologically, or physically. At its core, codependency involves a pattern of prioritizing others' needs over one's own needs to the point of neglecting self care, boundaries, and personal well being. It often stems from childhood experiences, such as growing up in an environment where love and validation were conditional or where caregiving roles were imposed at a young age. Over time, these dynamics can manifest in adults too, affecting every type of relationship, romantic, friendship, and even professional interactions. While codependency can take many forms, the following are some common types that individuals may experience. One, emotional codependency. Emotional codependency occurs when someone derives their self worth and identity from another person's approval, affection, or emotional state. They may feel responsible for managing the other person's feelings and go to great lengths to avoid conflict or discomfort in the relationship. Two, caretaker codependency. In this type, individuals feel an overwhelming need to care for others, often at the expense of their own needs. They may believe that their value lies in being indispensable to others, which can lead to burnout and resentment. Three, rescuer codependency. Rescuers are drawn to people they perceive as needing help or fixing. This dynamic can create a cycle of dependency where the rescuer feels validated by being needed and the other person becomes reliant on their support. Four, people pleasing. People pleasers struggle to say no and often prioritize others' happiness over their own. This type of codependency is characterized by fear of rejection or disapproval and a strong desire to avoid conflict. 5. Martyr codependency. Martyrs sacrifice their own needs and desires, often feeling unappreciated or taken advantage of. They may use their sacrifices as a way to manipulate or guilt others into reciprocating. And 6. Dependent codependency. Dependent codependents may rely heavily on another person for emotional stability, decision making, and a sense of identity. They may struggle with self confidence and fear being alone. Some common signs of any type of codependency include difficulty setting and maintaining boundaries, an excessive need for approval and validation, neglecting self care or personal goals to focus on others, a fear of abandonment or rejection, feeling responsible for others' emotions, and resentment or burnout from giving too much. If any of these resonate, it's essential to explore the underlying causes. Overcoming codependency requires self-awareness, commitment, and support. Seeking professional help is often the first step in addressing codependency. I thought that was a really great, succinct description of codependency and all of the various ways that it can manifest, because it can be super, super subtle, right? So we may not realize that our relationship is actually in a codependent or unhealthy type of dynamic. And I think having a more well-rounded understanding can help us just be more self-aware, right? And then there are two main types of codependency, as well as like the various ways that codependency can manifest in relationships. The two main types are called passive and active codependency. So this article is from New Perspective Counseling, and it's called What Are the Types of Codependency? The term codependency was first used to describe the relationship between people struggling with addiction and the partners who enable them. In the years since, our understanding of codependent behavior has evolved. We now know that codependency is linked to an underdeveloped sense of self and a reliance on others to feel validated and loved. We also know that codependent behavior comes in different flavors. As with many of our behaviors, codependency can be thought of as a self-defense mechanism that develops in response to our relationships. In a very real sense, it's a survival strategy. As children, we learn how to get love. When we don't learn to give that love to ourselves, we learn how to get it from others. Often, codependency develops in response to an unhealthy environment at home early on. A child learns that to receive love, they must be quiet and well behaved, tone down, and hide parts of themselves to keep the peace. Alternatively, they may have learned to fight back against a controlling caretaker through some mixture of manipulation, triangulation, and conflict. So, passive codependency. We have a tendency to think of codependents as victims, and passive codependents do resemble the stereotype on the surface. A combination of low self esteem, shame, and fear of rejection leads them to tolerate abuse and neglect from their partners. Because they do not love themselves, they look for validation and praise from others. This makes them vulnerable to manipulation and coercion. As a general rule, passive codependents are driven to avoid conflict. In order to keep the peace, they may neglect their own needs and desires or defer to decisions made by others. It's common for them to lie or cover up bad behavior in order to keep the peace among family members or maintain the veneer of a successful relationship. Their lack of self-love may make it difficult for them to set and maintain boundaries, causing them to sacrifice their own interests and goals in order to try to make their partner happy. Active codependency. In contrast to a passive codependent, an active codependent feels most secure when they believe that their partner needs them. This is often evident in the type of partners they choose. Active codependents are classic codependents in the sense that they may be drawn to partners who struggle with addiction, impulse control, or other self-destructive behaviors. While we often associate codependency with submission and victimhood, an active codependent isn't afraid of conflict. They often cast themselves in the role of caretaker or savior and expect praise and validation in exchange for their sacrifice and support. In a darker scenario, an active codependent may actually encourage or promote unhealthy behaviors in order to keep partners reliant on them. And this may feed a partner's addiction or undermine a partner's efforts to achieve independence. Whew, let's take a deep breath after that one, you guys. This is kind of a heavy topic. And it may seem like I'm going a bit harsh on cancers, but it's out of love, you guys. Like I said, I myself am a cancer and I've known many cancers. So I feel like I understand this pattern and I've been on both the giving and receiving end of it. And I feel like I see both parts of the active and passive codependent behaviors showing up in various past relationships that I've had. I also know that quite a few cancers listen to the podcast. So shout out to my fellow cancers. Happy early birthday to all of you. And I'm talking about this because I really feel that it's relevant to our healing and our evolution because cancer energy is powerful, right? And that powerful energy can be used to heal or harm dramatically, especially in queer spirituality and queer community, because the Cancer archetype and act of self mothering is sacred. So many queer folks had to learn to self parent early. Regardless of anyone's gender identity, we each have an inner mother and an inner father. The inner mother nurtures us. Cancer energy asks, can you become your own safe place? Can you mother yourself with tenderness instead of waiting for someone else to do it? You may actually find that you're way better at nurturing yourself than anyone else ever could be. If Cancer is your sun sign, your identity centers around emotional depth, protection, and the need to create emotional and physical safety for yourself and others. If Cancer is your moon sign, your inner world is highly sensitive and intuitive. You need a sense of emotional security to feel grounded. If Cancer is your rising sign, others experience you as being caring, gentle, receptive, and even reserved or shy. Cancer teaches that emotional expression is nourishment, not weakness. True strength is the ability to feel deeply without drowning. So reflect. Which house does Cancer rule in your chart? And do you have any planets in Cancer? These areas will be highlighted during Cancer season. And then consider, where might I be overgiving in order to feel needed? Do any of the codependency types apply to me? What would it look like to offer care to others without abandoning myself and practice establishing boundaries proactively to keep a healthy balance? Throughout the year, we've been following this symbolic journey through the zodiac wheel. We started back in March with Aries season, bringing the initial sense of self or ego. Taurus season represents the physical embodiment of that ego sense. Gemini represents the mind, and Cancer represents the heart. This transition from Gemini season to Cancer season is subtle but powerful. Gemini gathers data, Cancer processes emotion. Gemini speaks, thinks, and writes. Cancer feels, and feels. The spiritual growth here, as always, is in the integration. Are your words aligned with your emotional reality? How about your thoughts? Are you communicating what you actually feel or just what seems logical? In yoga, we focus on cultivating a conscious connection between the body, which holds emotion, the breath, which is our energy, and the thinking mind, which is highly affected by both. Wisdom lives in the heart mind connection, which we could also call a mind body connection or a mind body energy connection. When air energy and water energy work together astrologically, then insight becomes intimacy, as in into me, I see intimacy. So use this energy to get to know yourself more because you can only meet someone else as deeply as you have met yourself, mentally and emotionally. This astrological moment is reminding us to let our minds play and be curious, and to let our hearts open and respond intuitively. You are allowed to think clearly and also feel deeply. Those two things are not opposites. Where's Gemini in your chart? Where's Cancer in your chart? Which houses are being activated? Are you stuck in your head, overanalyzing, or are you drowning in emotion? As always, the medicine is in the balance. And getting into your body is a great way to get out of your head and work through any emotions. So check out an online yoga class through QSA's online member platform or our YouTube channels and work some of that energy through. And then our ritual journaling challenge for this episode is very exciting, you guys. It is called Letter to Your Inner Child. So, fairly self explanatory. Step one is the Gemini portion. Write a letter by hand to your younger self, any age, or it could be multiple different ages, and just tell your younger self what you understand that you didn't back then. You can give your younger self positive affirmations and love and tell them about your adult self and all the amazing things you've done. And then step two is the Cancer portion. Place your hand over your heart and read the letter out loud to yourself while looking into a mirror and let yourself feel whatever comes up. And just doing this simple activity is holding space for your own inner child and for your own emotions. It's a potent opportunity to heal, integrate, and rewrite any outdated inner narratives. On a subconscious level, our inner child directs so many of our emotional responses. And by engaging our conscious thinking mind and using handwriting to somatically process the memories, thoughts, and emotions, we are essentially creating an opportunity for alchemy within our body. We're stimulating that mind body connection through physically writing with our hands and allowing that energy to be physically moved through emotionally and mentally through that process of writing. So, this alchemy is the same as integration, right? It is essentially creating an opportunity for your body to integrate this wisdom, the information you have now as an adult in the present with past memories and maybe past pain that your inner child is holding on to. It's basically a way to prove to our inner child that they are safe now with us, that our adult self is going to take care of our child self. So, this exercise is a more literal representation of that mind body energy connection or mind heart connection. And it's also a wonderful way to work with self reparenting. That inner father being the logical mind, kind of like the inner parent, and the inner mother being the emotional heart, kind of like the inner child. So try out that exercise and share any reflections with us in the comments, please. To summarize, in this episode, we unpacked the astrological energy of the upcoming new moon in Gemini on June 14th. We dove deep into what to expect for the energetic shift of the sun into Cancer on the summer solstice, Cancer's medicine of emotional sovereignty and lessons of codependency. And we applied a practical method for integrating the heart mind connection. The ultimate form of self love is reparenting your inner child through balancing the inner mother and the inner father energy. If you'd like to book a personal astrology reading with me, you can do so on my website at youareloved.one/readings. And I'd be honored to dive into your chart with you to see how this astrological weather is affecting you personally. And if you're in the Northeast Ohio area, please join us in celebrating the summer solstice. You're invited to honor the longest day of the year in community with us during this yoga, meditation, and nature retreat day. On Sunday, June 21st, 2026, we will meet at Kelly's Working Well Farm in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. Come and enjoy a full day of yoga and meditation in the farm pasture, a guided ecotherapy practice, relaxation time in nature, hiking, river swimming, and farm tours. Vegetarian lunch will be provided, and dinner is an optional potluck, and we'll conclude the day with an evening bonfire. If you're interested, please sign up on our website events page. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, let's stay connected and stay witchy. I'll talk to you soon, and blessed be. With all my love, Lee Davy.